Welcome to
What's a block?
Triple Blockheads,
Back set. Block down.
the podcast for all things volleyball.
Blockhead!
Aloha and welcome to another episode of Triple Blockheads. Makani here with Marc and Frank, and we're going to talk about changing positions. Should you do it? When should you do it? What things should trigger you to do it? And eventually, if you do, how do you get to that acceptance that I'm not in that role that I was prior? But before then, I would be remiss to kind of call out a 1-year anniversary of Triple Blockheads. We made it, fellas.
We did it. We did it.
We did it.
We made it a year.
1 whole year rocking this mustache. I haven't even touched it.
That's the big takeaway from a year? Is
I mean, once
really
we,
committed
once we,
to the mustache.
Once we printed out logos, we kind of had to commit to it.
Stickers were created about 18 months ago, and the mustache has now been a permanent fixture.
Yeah, it's got to stay. It's trademarked.
I've gotten really used to it. I actually enjoy the mustache now.
Thanks.
Initially, when you first had it, I was like, you look...
Like I shouldn't coach kids.
like you shouldn't be involved with children. But now I think it's party. It's fitting.
It's just some of the brown starting to grow in. It's like brown and black now. Looks a little more family friendly.
Yeah. Fuller.
Yeah.
Less dirty.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're there.
Solid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not quite Ron Burgundy, but you're progressing.
Yeah, I mean, we're a volleyball podcast. We're not a San Diego Channel 5 or whatever they are.
But again, I think 1 year through. Thanks for all the viewers that are out there. This has been really a blast. So we'll continue to do it as long as everyone's continues to enjoy it. And honestly, we enjoyed it no matter what.
Yeah, even if you don't, we'll probably still do it because I have a lot of fun hanging out with these guys.
I do learn so much from you guys, and hopefully other people are too.
Fantastic. So speaking of just kind of talking through what's happening out there, you're in the middle of kind of starting or right in the start of your club season. And I know changing positions happens a lot in that club space, especially with the number of teams you have, the number of players that you have. Talked a little bit about kind of the scenarios of when and how and that those role change happens.
Yeah, there's a lot of scenarios. At least for our club, and every club's different in how they navigate player positions. Like when our kids sign up for tryouts on the registration form, they are putting the positions they play. And almost every player is putting multiple positions, which is cool to see. And I feel like we see a lot of different types of themes that happen by the time these kids all get older. Some notorious ones are the maybe undersized outside, who needs to maybe become a DS or libero. The middle, who maybe needs to start learning how to play in the pin. The setter, who maybe is a great defensive setter and needs to maybe transition into the DS role as well. You don't see a lot of DSs moving from DSs. They aren't not a lot of DSs going into outside roles unless there's a huge growth spurt or something. I think position changes in club for us really starts with what the athlete's goal is. Yeah. If their goal is to play, for example, high-level Division I volleyball, they're going to have to, that undersized outside, for example, is going to have to think about being a DS or making that part of her training, or even the role in her team. If she wants to play maybe Division II, Division III, there's no reason for us to change her position because that would make a lot of sense for her, And then we have to align, for us as a club, we have to align those changes with fit on the team.
Right.
Because that change might not fit the rest of her teammates.
Yeah.
And that's when I think, for us, we just aren't the right fit then as a club for this kid and her situation and what her goals are. So there's a lot of changes that happen every year, but I think trying to solve that puzzle by the kid really depends on what the kid's goal is. And this is, I think, a high school conversation that we're having. I think the middle school kids, you're not really trying to do that a whole lot.
I think that's really important, that like these are high school conversations when you talk about the future.
Yeah.
Right? When you're learning the game and growing, like I'm an advocate that you do all positions. You know what I mean? We've talked multiple times about multi-position training at a young age, but I think if you're not doing that, you're doing the kids a disservice, right? You're putting them behind on reps that they could and should be getting. Like, just because I'm tall, I'm not a middle, I get a pass. You know what I mean? Because they're going to end up wanting to transition to an outside at some point because their arm is terminal or whatever. And now I'm at such a passing deficit because there's been 4 or 5 years where I haven't got those serve receive reps because I was a middle because I've been tall. Like, that's not fair to that kid. So push it off till high school and then have those conversations with Frank.
Or your club director, whatever club you're in.
Nope, Frank specific. just Frank.
So I think maybe we look at these in the different triggers or the events that cause that role to change. All right. And I think because I think how you deal with them are different.
Yeah.
So let's start with the first, I think, is club selection. So I'm trying out for a club, and you're in the situation where, hey, I put down that I want to be an outside, right? I want to be an outside. I apply that way, but you may see like, hey, on my top team, they need my third outside, or they could play right side for me. Changing that position, or hey, I actually want you to play middle. Like, how does that conversation go, and what comes into that conversation with that athlete?
I think it's exactly that. It's like you just tell them like, here's what we need, and here's how we would use you potentially, based on the other kids that might already be committed to the team. You know, I think that's also the part you have to navigate is where are you at in your commitment timeline per team, and if you don't have offers out for that first or second outside yet, then maybe you commit to that kid as your first outside, your second outside, and you build around that, you know? But I think, like what you said, like explain the situation to them is like the best thing you can do. Put the ball in their court, let them make the decision on what they would want to do, and let them know what your situation is on your team. And then you don't have to worry about trying to manage that once training starts.
Yeah, transparency is key, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially from a parent aspect, right? They want to know what they're getting into and what they're paying into, and that it's going to look like what you said it's going to look like. So that transparency piece is huge for coaches' sanity, parent sanity, player happiness, and development. Like that's the key. Lay out what's going to happen, and then they're either in or they're out, right? But now we have a foot to stand on about here. This is what we talked about, and this is what we're doing. It's like, and if you're unhappy with it, remember that we had this conversation.
Right.
We did this. You agreed that this is what we were going to look for and go. And if you like, and people are unhappy in roles all the time, right? That happens. Continue that transparency in those conversations. But if it starts from a place of transparency and truth, those secondary, more difficult conversations are much easier to have because I've been open and honest this whole time with you. So I'll continue to do that. You don't love your role and you want to shift into something else? Okay. I don't know if we'll get many game opportunities over the next few months to do that, but we can definitely incorporate it into training, right? And get you more reps at that thing that you're trying to do. So that communication piece and transparency piece is paramount, I would say.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think from the athlete and the parent lens, every one of these scenarios and everything in this episode are on, you know, the role and the changing. It starts with choice and ends with acceptance. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to be really cognizant that as long as those coaches and those clubs in this scenario are being transparent with you, this is what we need from you. Yeah. That you have the choice to either say, I'm in, or this isn't the right fit, this is not really what I want my role to be, and find the secondary option. But I think a lot of times we're so focused on the team that we want to be with, or the people that we want to be with, or the parents that we want to be with, or the club that we want to be with, that trumps my role and what I want out of this, right? Remember, you're the one who is coming in. You're the one paying for the club.
Right.
You're investing in this. It should be what you want.
Yeah.
Not just the situation, right? It's also what your development part is. But once you do make that choice, you have to lean in and accept whatever that role is that you agreed to.
I think that's the big thing is once you decide that this is it, and even if it's for those other factors, right? It's your friends are on the team, it's the coach that you want to play for, learn from, you know what I mean? Whatever those are, they could weigh more than what your actual role on that team is going to be. And that's okay.
Very true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But once you decide, you're in it. And the rest of those conversations need to be about how to be a good teammate, accept your role, get what you need, and still grow, develop as a human and player through that process as well.
I think that before we move to the next scenario, I think what's interesting around the transparency part is I think every club does it differently. Some level of transparency is, hey, you're going to compete for this role and whatever it might be. Whereas other levels of transparency are, hey, you're the third person on this. You absolutely can compete. That's something that we always do in our gym. But I'm going to tell you right off the bat, you're number 3. Like that's a different level of transparency, I think, to that kid to make them have a educated decision on what they're willing to accept or not. And I think for those of you who are listening out there, like that is a question you have to ask. And like right now on the depth chart, am I 3? Am I 1? Am I 2? Like I know we all are going to compete, but I think having all the details is important.
Yeah, I struggle with that level of specificity a little bit because so much progress and development can happen over the course of a club season. Like, I don't want to discourage a kid that really is the third right now, but if she's a freak athlete that's a little raw, you know what I mean? I want that kid as my third or fourth, and I'm going to train them up, and hopefully by the end of club, they're in that lineup. Do you know what I mean? So words matter. They have weight, right? How are we presenting the plan for this kid, I think, more than here's where you are, this is your role, let's decide from day one. I think that's really hard to do. Club season's too long, right? To pigeonhole a kid into this is what you're going to get.
Sure.
But laying that groundwork, and I think representing her role as a plan, as a development plan over a season is really important.
Sure.
I think that can ease some of the initial apprehension if you're like, okay, well, you're not in that starting rotation right now. I don't see you there at this moment. But these are the things that I see we need to improve on. This is how we're going to get there. And hopefully we're getting more playing time by the time we're into March, April, into qualifiers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think all of that is important.
And I think either way you attack that situation, you're going to get a feeling from the family on what their goals are, and that's going to really direct the fit.
That's right.
And like whether it's here's your role right now or here's the training plan, like that family's gonna let you know, like, hey, we want these are our priorities because these are our goals. And then as a club director or the coach of the team, you got to figure out if that fits your plan.
Yeah. So they're on a team now. Okay. And I think this is an interesting scenario on this. There's either a team fit, an injury situation. The team itself now has a change, which has resulted in your role changing. Talk a little bit about like how you approach that. Obviously, in match and things like that, in tournament is different. Once you get home from that, and that scenario is going to be what you have for the foreseeable future, how are you talking through that change in role?
With the older kids, you're hoping that it's just something that you have to change during that tournament. And then the next tournament, hopefully your lineup is back to what you like it to be at, or you're able to, like for us, we would sub someone into that group and to play the position that we want them to train at, you know, because for us, it's like an opportunity for someone else to hop in to the position. Like, let's say our setter goes down. That's probably the most consequential for us in our club because we only run 5-1s. So if our setter goes down in a tournament, someone has to change their role and step in, and we only want to deal with that for that tournament. And then the next tournament, we're going to sub someone into that team, and now they get the opportunity to go set on the top team or the 3s to the 2s team. So we want to figure out all those changes of positions before the roster is even set.
Sure. So let's put her in a situation. Maybe it's more from a collegiate standpoint. Let's say you had your top 2 middles go down or whatever, and now you're left with your right side playing middle, whatever it is. So, because that's a complete role change. You're going from one thing to another. You know what? Like, how do we talk to our athletes to say, hey, obviously this is best for the team. It's out of necessity. Like, how do you support them so that they have role acceptance, so they know they're not going to be? Because sometimes young athletes, especially, I think you put them in a situation where it's not their normal. They become like, I'm either letting the team down, I'm struggling, I'm not being successful. Then eventually it kind of grows into like, man, I'm just kind of a liability out here. I'm not really having a lot of fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the first thing we do with role acceptance across the board is at the beginning of season, we have a role conversation and they sign a piece of paper saying, this is what my role is. This is how I intend to behave in the role that I have. These are the ways I'm going to be a good teammate. And then they sign it, right? It's not legally binding. It doesn't do anything, but it does allow for an easy entryway into the conversation if they're not accepting the role. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, remember we signed this. Do you think you are living up to what you outlined here that you would? And then it starts the conversation, right? Which is a hard conversation to kind of get into, right? The kid's unhappy. You're probably frustrated a little bit. So it just gives you a gateway to get into it. So I think that's important. With any kind of major position change or whatever in college, I think your culture in your program will dictate how smoothly that change goes, I guess, more than anything. If it's commonly accepted that we're good teammates, we do what's best for the team first, that mentality, those transitions become a little bit easier, I would say. But like, it's difficult. So how do you deal with maybe that imposter syndrome or something that's coming about? I think that individual is going to garner more attention from you. You know what I mean? If I'm putting you into a situation that I know you're uncomfortable with, I can't leave you on an island to just deal with that by yourself. You know what I mean? I'm going to be right on your back the whole time, encouraging, managing those expectations, right? Because we all compete at high levels. If I transfer into this position, I'm going to compare myself to those other people in that position. And that's not fair, really, because I'm just getting started. So how do I maintain realistic expectations? What are the realistic goals that I'm trying to have right now? And then that training plan of where we're going to continue to go to. And if it's something where maybe that middle sprained an ankle or something, so they're going to be out for 3 weeks. You know what I mean? And we need you to fill for those 3 weeks. Okay, what do I need for those 3 weeks? Right. I need you to be an okay blocker. I need you to be an option offensively. I don't need you to get a bunch of kills. That's not what we're looking for. Like, can we manage through this? And I'll make sure you still get your right side reps that you need. I think that's the other big piece. If it's going to be a short-term fix, how are we still keeping you sharp with the thing that you need to be sharp at while plugging the hole that we currently have in that position?
Yeah. And I think the other part, and this has happened a lot in the collegiate side, in my experiences, I think it's one thing to say, hey, we're going to help you find success in the role that you're in that's not really what you are signed up to be.
Yeah.
But I think there's also some level of authenticity on what everybody else's role and how it changes because of that move. Because volleyball is such a team sport that one move and one person out of position changes everything.
Yeah.
You know, one person has to play a little bit more defense, or one person needs to block a little more coverage, or we need to maybe pinch a little bit more here, or maybe it's the setter, we need to have more offense in other places because of the fact that they run the back better than they do the outside, or whatever it might be, because everyone has a different skill set. But I think in that level of role change that's part of the team or unexpected situation, I think it's not just the person who's changing, it's also my role in the same position, but my role is different.
Yeah, definitely. And let's just continue with this right side to middle situation, right? If your previous middle was getting set at 11 or 12% of your total offense, this new one isn't. Where are you getting your sets from? How are you still having an effective attack up the middle? Does that mean more back row attack opportunities? Do I need to have a conversation with a pin and be like, hey, we're going to have you hit more bic, so let's make sure we're working on that in training, preparing the outside in general, like, hey, you're going to get a few more balls than you normally would. And whoever is now filling my right side role is probably not receiving the volume that I was receiving as a right side. So your distribution on your offense is definitely going to change. How do you work through that offensive system adjustment? And sounds redundant, but it's talking through it. You know what I mean? As a coach, when you make that change, we need to examine what other pieces are going to have to be manipulated for us to still be successful. I'm all for mixing things up. If you've watched us at all this year, we run 12 deep at times, and anybody can pop off, and that's part of why we've had success. That's not by accident. And it takes a mature type of team to be able to do those kinds of things and accept that it might not be my night tonight and I'm going to be off, and that's okay because we got other pieces that can come and fill and be successful. So, but all of those are conversations that we're having daily. You know what I mean? Like even from matchup to matchup.
Yeah. I think this is where, when things happen to your team that are unexpected, I think is really where you see elite level coaching and programs excel, because they have the infrastructure and mindset to be like, it's not just one change, it's everybody. Like, we've all changed now, right?
Yeah.
It happened to Susie, but it actually happened to the program. So the program needs to adjust to figure out how we move forward together to continue to be successful. Susie's still on the team. Her role is just a little bit different. Now she's going to be a pseudo coach and providing feedback and doing scouts and all the things and rehabbing. That's her job.
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer in that. The last kind of scenario, and I think this happens usually in like the 15, 16-ish, maybe in the early 17s, but development, future role, what if that player is not happy in the role they're in because of some of those other types of enablers, right? How do you guys work through that scenario? Like, hey, I'm in this role right now, but so-and-so school wants me to do this. Or, hey, I feel like I'm developing more into this role versus that role.
I think it starts with making sure that they're getting training in that. So, like, even if they're not a fit right now to be that role on your team, they have to still get training in all facets of the game if they're still a prep athlete. I think we see a lot with 18s and 17s where a girl's getting recruited by a school and that school wants them to play this position and we have them somewhere else.
It's usually middle to some pin, left or right. I'd say that's a common one.
That's probably the common one, yeah. Or it's like a 6'2" setter, which we don't do a lot anymore. That's going to be expected to run
DS.
a 5'1" or be a DS or something like that too. So I think your training should already have that stuff in it, where you're in club, where you're still teaching, all the skills of volleyball, even if you're a high-level high school team. For us, I coach our top 17s team. I think one would think that most of our players are kind of set in stone where they're going to play at, and that might be the case for most of them, but you still want them to learn they should all know how to set a ball. They should all know blocking schemes. You still are preparing their, you're still teaching the game to them, even if you're a high level 17s team and you have 10 people on your team instead of 8 or something like that. We see a lot of positional frustration when there's a kid playing a different position on their high school team than what they're playing in club. So we had a kid this year who, a great outside hitter in high school, she had to set, or a really good club middle in high school, she had to play outside. And I think when they're older, they're feeling the pressure of exposure and trying to play in front of college coaches. So there's an education piece too that, do what's best for your high school team. Is my opinion, because in the long run, like, what you're doing in clubs is going to probably make a bigger difference. But if you don't know that, then you don't know that, And then if you're the high school coach, like, can you still find some training for that kid on the pin? If I was a high school coach, that's something you have to balance. And that's what just makes it so different than club coaching.
I mean, if Cooper DeJean can play quarterback in high school and then DB and then running back and then be in the NFL I'm just, my point is that like high school, you have a finite, you have what you have to choose from.
Right.
And I think this is kind of off topic, and maybe it's not from a role perspective. In club, I think my message to that top level high school player on that high school team from that experience is about use that time to build your role as a leader and as a mentor. And it's less, in my opinion, that period of time is so short, and it's use that not necessarily to fine tune your to expert your skill set and technique. You need to work on those things 100%. But I think it's all the other things.
Yeah, it's value add, right? Outside of on-court stuff. We have had a kid this year that lost a spot, had a opportunity, like you could see right on the fence. She could have leaned and put a foot out the door, or lean into that off-court leadership and adding value, even though she wasn't getting the playing time that she wanted. And I'm really proud of her for leaning into that leadership. It's been a huge value add for our team. Like, has blown me away all year with what she's been able to do. That's the hardest decision to make as a player, is to lean into the team when you're not getting what you want. Mm-hmm. And this quote I keep coming back to is, the grass is greener where you water it. Mm. Like, if you want a great experience, invest in yourself and do the things that are going to create a great experience for you and your team. But if the team succeeds and you're winning, that's more fun. You know what I mean? So how do we keep encouraging kids to lean into that stuff, right? Especially if they got injured, especially if you're not in that role that you want, right? If everything's going your way, it's easy to accept that role. When it's not, or when you get beat out, when you face that real adversity, how are you going to continue to value add? How are you going to keep being a good teammate? How are you going to keep helping your team win if it's not you the one scoring points when you're out there?
Yeah. It is the hardest thing. And we talk a lot about together around keep the main thing the main thing. And that's your macro goal. And if your team goal is this and you've bought into those things and you care about your teammates, I think it doesn't matter what your role is. You need to figure out, all right, this is what I need to get that main thing and that goal to support my team. Now I have this concept of being on purpose. Like, whatever you do, you got to be on purpose. If my role is to be on the bench and I'm going to make sure that everyone's hype, I need to be on purpose every single time that I'm fulfilling that job. Yeah. And I think that it's mindset. It really is. And that leads back to the acceptance of whatever that role might be. Either as hype man, water person, training buddy, like training room buddy, believe me or not, like that's an actual thing, huge thing, right? Or it's your, 5 kilo set kid. Like that's a role too.
Right.
Yeah, that hit home for me what Marc talked about. Like when I was growing up, I was always the starting setter, always on teams though that never got close to winning the whole thing. And when I decided I wanted to, figure out where I was going to go after I was done playing junior college volleyball, I wanted to go somewhere where I had a chance to win the whole thing. And my identity was still that I'm a starting setter. And, when I got to St. Ambrose, it was, this is why they're a winning team. Everyone's good. And I was the backup setter my career at St. Ambrose. And that really challenged my identity. And there was nights where I wanted to transfer. Like, why did I move all the way from California to come here and be in this role? And then, I made the decision over and over to, like you said, water the grass where you're at. And I reminded myself that was my goal. My goal was to go somewhere where I had the chance to win. And I think that's just like, it comes back to club players, college players. Like, what's your goal in this thing? Like, there's no wrong goal to have. Just try to have a goal by the time you're a junior, senior, and then when you're figuring out your club situation, like, just make sure you're communicating your goals. And in my case, it's up to the club directors to see if that fits. college coach is probably the same thing. I'm sure you're having those conversations with kids too, who are, when you're recruiting, like what do they see for themselves? And I think that's a big piece, is to keep asking yourself that question, like, what do I want out of the game? Because I could have gone somewhere and been the starting setter and never really maybe had the chance to, win the whole thing. But that was like a non-negotiable for me. That ended up being my goal. And it was really hard doing that as a backup. But like, man, those are the most fun practices I've ever been in. Like the daily grind of being on a team like that. I mean, I'll never forget some of those practices. They were as intense as game days, and we took pride. The 2 side took pride in trying to beat the 1 side, and we would beat them, during practice. And we felt like we were actually really preparing our starters, and that was such a cool culture to be a part of, because there were a lot of guys like me on that 2 side who their identity, their whole career probably was being the starter. So learning how to make that choice and accept that choice and recognize that it's actually going to give your team a leg up. I thought that was how every team went until I started coaching and realizing how rare that is. And maybe it's even more rare today, but I'm so glad I made that decision as a player and chose to evolve my identity, because I just don't think I'd be here today. I don't think I have that sort of work ethic in my coaching career or my club leadership role.
I think too, to that point, the real life experience is like priceless. Like to hear that, and the actual story is priceless. So I appreciate you sharing that, because, if you think about if you love the game, and if you want the game to be something that you want to continue forth for your life, something that you like, this is something that I'm really passionate about. Accepting where you are is going to be huge, because if you didn't do that, and you're like, I'm the backup, whatever, I'm going to walk away. Like, I don't think any of this would have happened. I don't think any of the director would have happened. Like,
exactly.
You know what I mean? I think there's so many things around, give yourself a shot, no matter what. You can always pivot. Mm-hmm. But if you don't put everything you're in and accept whatever role that you're in, you're just missing any opportunity that would have led from that. Before we kind of end, I want to talk not from the athlete's point of accepting the role, but I think from a coaching perspective, what can we do more of to reaffirm that player's feeling on their role and their acceptance of that role, comfortability, what their level of success, like what are the things that we can do to continue to have conversation around, hey, is this something? And it's more in the club space, right? What are the things you're getting? What are the things you need? What are the things you're thinking about? Is this still what type of role you want to be? Not saying you're going to change it there, but just, I think, having awareness.
Yeah, I think trying to teach the game as a 6-person game and not teaching the game just as, 6 different positions on the court, Like if you took if you looked at volleyball from a mile away, you wouldn't really see positions. You'd see 6 people on a court, And so trying to teach the entire game to everybody, where a libero, if for some reason you had a libero having to go block, she'd have a basic understanding of blocking schemes. And just trying to teach the whole game to everybody. And I think that makes adjustments easier, and it makes communicating those adjustments easier, because you're strategizing more than you are saying, hey, you're not playing front row anymore. It's more like, hey, we're going to put this blocker here and try and stop this girl, And so I think that's from a club side, just teaching the whole game, raising players' IQ, and then they'll see, that I'm not being punished. We're just, for this matchup, this makes sense for our team.
Yeah, that's huge. I think the plan that goes along with it, like communicate all aspects of that and ask those questions that you mentioned right before. Like, are you happy? What do you feel like you need to be successful in the role that you currently have? Like, have those check-ins, right? I think one of the worst things that can happen is the kid feels isolated or alone, right? If you're already not accepting or not happy in the situation that you're in, if you're not getting love from your coach in that moment, That's an easy way to lean to the negative, to get that foot out the door. So how are you checking in? How are you making sure that they get what they need to feel like they can be successful in the role that they're in, more than whether or not they are finding success in it? It's like perception's reality. So if I change my role and I'm not super happy, but coach is like helping me through it and talking me to it and giving me a little bit more attention, that's what I want. You know what I mean? I want to feel like I'm valued, even though I'm not getting 5 kills a set anymore, or for whatever reason. You know what I mean? So the communication piece is, to me, like one of the most important things you can do. If you're gonna alter somebody's identity or life, right? Just realize how much weight you have to impact their general well-being, and you have to give more to that kid so that they can still feel valued, feel appreciated, lean into that team a little bit more, right? Your love is going to help them along that hard process that they're going through.
I think that's the way I would sum this up in this conversation, our role changing and acceptance of those roles. And again, we talked about multiple scenarios, so like how this actually happens in either a season. Some is different because you have fluid players. Some are different because you have a finite number of players. But I think there's always two parties, right? It's the team and the coach and the program. And then it's the actual individual themselves who are making those changes. I would summarize this as a player and as a coach, you want those players to be heard and valued, which would drive engagement. And that engagement will drive success and acceptance to what that is, that new role is.
Yeah.
And I think that gets you to your main thing. And I think that's really the purpose here, right? Is continuing that main thing, not just from the program or the team or the club, but also that main thing for that player is continue their development, whatever that situation might be.
100%.
So I love this because I think sometimes it's hard for those athletes, and I think the parents that are listening out there, that change happens fluidly.
Yeah.
And it's out of your control, especially in the parent side. And I think if it's out of your control, I think these are the things that we need to coach our sons and daughters about as people, not as athletes, but these are transferable to the life.
100%. This is life 101 here, right? It's never going to work out exactly how you think it's going to, and it's all how you deal with those situations.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thanks for a year, everybody out there. Blockheads, it's been real, and we'll continue forward. And until next time, Blockheads.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Triple Blockheads. Make sure you like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss an episode.